Aroma Ote, the Securities and Exchange Commission's Director, General Media Briefing in essence yesterday. Of course, there were a few other question and answer sessions. We focus on this in the days ahead. But let's bring in, as we said, some legal perspectives to the entire issue. Let's get some insight into what is going on. Who has the right to do what? The powers of the SEC, unraveling unfounded allegations and things like that. What are the wider powers of the SEC? And if any rule of law or rule of lawlessness has been exercised in this instance. Ikechukwu Ikeji is barrister and solicitor at law, is joining us live in the studio. Thank you very much for coming in despite the very short notice which we gave you overnight on this particular issue. Let's look with the powers of the SEC, as it were. You just said before we got to you, you're listening to Aroma Ote there, that the SEC has powers that goes into protecting investors at the marketplace and things like that. Does the situation on ground call for such actions?
Now, the definition of the situation on ground that would warrant SEC acting in such a way as to protect statutorily empowered function, protect public interest or investors. That definition lies within SEC, and it lies within the ambit of SEC to define whether events have occurred as to warrant their intervening in the interest of the public and the investors.
If you look at the allegations, as it were, by SEC, says alleged corporate governance lapses, allegations of financial irregularity, litigations between Dangote and a few others, Atelola and Co., who Atelola, of course, is not on the Council of the Exchange, as well as mismanagement. These were issues. If you remember the story about the petition that Dangote wrote to SEC, as confirmed, was that the stock exchange was insolvent. So that is the basis, and the SEC says it is on the basis of these allegations of insolvency that the 2009 financial statement of stock exchange will reveal that the two of them were removed.
I wouldn't believe that SEC's action stemmed from allegations of insolvency.
That's what SEC says yesterday in this statement, and that's what you just said on television.
I don't think so. If you had listened to the DG SEC properly, you would realize that the issues she raised were far beyond mere allegations. It goes to the stability of the market. It goes to the interest of the public. It goes to the interest of the investors. There is need to maintain some kind of hold on the movement, on the transactions in the stock exchange, so as to not erode the investors' confidence, and also so as to protect public interest. These are powers that SEC have to act. I don't want us to whittle it down to debase it by saying that the SEC's actions were based on allegations. Of course, it may be based on allegations, but we may interpret those allegations from the wider perspective, bringing in public interest and investors and investor protection.
Very, very interesting. So we discount what the SEC itself says, because it says the SEC will be launching an immediate and transparent investigations into the exchange and its staff to examine the alleged corporate governance lapses and the allegations of financial irregularity and mismanagement.
Yes.
Now, those were explicit statements. Right. The ISA 2007 gave the powers to protect and make sure there's an orderly market for transactions to take place. Therefore, if there are issues of corporate governance on one side, in the issue of whether there's a succession plan for the NSE or otherwise, and if there are issues regarding corporate governance, the internal affairs of the stock exchange as an entity, as a self-regulatory organization, whose council are never appointed by the SEC, whose members of council are not subject to SEC's approval or verifications, as it were, the appointment of who becomes the Director General of Stock Exchange is never been the business of SEC, is not in the law. SEC is not empowered to know. The Council of the Exchange can sack any of its staff at any point in time without informing SEC. Therefore, where would the wider powers come in this case?
Now I will refer you to the Investment and Securities Act, Section 8. It runs from A to about Y. subsections. Those sections list out the functions of SEC. Among these functions include registration and regulation of
securities exchanges.
Securities exchanges and capital
trade points.
Capital trade points.
Exactly.
Now, regulation can be interpreted in so wide a sense.
No, you just stated a section that says SEC should do what?
SEC is empowered to register and regulate stock exchanges, securities exchanges, which includes stock exchanges,
of course,
capital trade points, which also includes stock exchanges. Now, regulation may involve taking action that will engender some form of discipline and stability within the market. Now, we are not going to take anything away from the internal powers of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, but those internal powers are drawn from the Companies and Allied Matters Act. Now, if you read a good look at the ISA will tell you that the Companies and Allied Matters Act, insofar as they are inconsistent with the ISA, are subject to the provisions of ISA. That means that the provisions of ISA override, supersede, and where there is a conflict, it takes precedence over the provisions of CAMA. So now, MSC, as it were, is a private company limited by guarantee. It's entitled to enforce its own internal regulations, but those internal regulations are subject to the provisions of ISA. And if they want to hold on to the provisions of CAMA that empowers them to internal regulation, they also have to draw that power furthermore from ISA, which supersedes CAMA. Now, now
the issue of allegations is what we are dealing with here. There's a petition written on the basis upon which SEC says we're acting. Therefore, there is a basis upon which you look at these allegations. And if a regulator says at this time we are unable to verify the truth, the validity, the facts, the truthfulness of these allegations, on what basis, therefore, would you ask someone to step aside or someone to be removed from office?
I'll cut you in there. Now, where SEC acts the manner it has acted, and persons affected by its acts, its actions, as it were, feel aggrieved by its actions, even the ISA makes abundant provisions for remedies. These persons are entitled to approach the Investment and Securities Tribunal. They are also entitled, as it were, under the Constitution, to approach the state's high courts, the federal high courts, at least under the fundamental rights provisions. Now, where they are dissatisfied furthermore from the decisions of the IST, assuming they are dissatisfied from those decisions, they are also entitled to go to the Court of Appeal all the way to the Supreme Court. Now, I am not going to make a clear-cut statement here that what SEC has done is legal, but I am sure that I know the law with regards to ISA's provisions for SEC, that SEC acted within the provisions of ISA. Those same provisions also allows persons affected by the actions of SEC to take the matter to the IST. So those are avenues, those are routes that persons affected by the pronouncements, as it were, may take, if they so wish, to remedy the situation.
In acting under law, now the powers that you were given, of course, I'm sure you know this. So they said the law is blind, if you want to put it that way. Yes. The exercise of powers, as the advertisement go, power without control, has to be exercised very carefully. That's within the context upon which you find varying opinions, as it were, regarding the wider implications of this. Of course, all over the world, we've seen in the case of banks and central banks or reserve bank, whatever name you decide to call it, where they've been taken over by certainty. But this is a very landmark case in which a Securities and Exchange Commission comes in, remove the president of the exchange, ask him to go away, ask the Director General to go away, appoint interim administrators without a definition of timeline as to when he goes out, but he stays there until